The night air over Albuquerque's western fringe feels colder than desert nights should. Out there, beyond the last row of street lamps, a low mesa rises against the horizon, an ink-black altar under a sky dusted with hard, sparkling stars. Listen carefully. The wind crossing that mesa carries more than sand. It carries secrets, and those secrets begin in 2003 when the city's brightest neon hummed over Central Avenue, while something darker stirred just beyond its glow. Tonight, I will guide you across that barren ground. I will tell you about 11 women whose lives ended beneath a crust of gravel and saltbush, and about the invisible hands that arrange their bones like a macabre gallery. This is the West Mesa Bone Collector, one of America's most chilling unsolved cases, retold so no one forgets that the desert remembers everything. Chapter 1. Vanishing Trails. Picture Central Avenue at midnight. Tavern doors yawning open, jukebox melodies bleeding onto cracked sidewalks, headlights sliding past like restless ghosts. On April 2nd, 2003, 22-year-old Jamie Barella leaned against a lamppost outside the Blue Cactus Bar, jacket zipped against a spring dust storm. She was waiting, though no one ever agreed on whom. Some said a friend promised her a ride home. Others swore a dark pickup circled the block twice before stopping at the curb. Jamie stepped forward, exchanged a few quick words, then climbed in. Taillights flickered once and were gone. Jamie's mother filed a missing person report the next morning. Officers jotted notes, nodded kindly, handed her a case number, and moved on to the next crisis. Weeks slipped by. Posters weathered in the sun. People whispered, but the city's pulse beat on. That summer, Cinnamon Elks disappeared from the same stretch of road. A streetwise survivor, Cinnamon knew every motel clerk and convenience store cashier by name. One Friday she called her sister, promised she would visit that weekend, then vanished before dawn. 2 weeks later, Evelyn Salazar's boyfriend woke to find her side of the bed cold. The pattern was forming, women vanishing like clock ticks no one bothered to count. Detective Ida Lopez began counting. She pinned photos on a corkboard, drawing red threads between last-seen addresses. Central Avenue bloomed into a blood-red vein on her map, leading west toward the open desert. She warned superiors a predator hunted the city's margins. They murmured about limited resources, asked for stronger evidence, and returned to paperwork that screamed more loudly. Ida kept digging. In November 2004, Monica Candelaria told a friend she was meeting a man who drove a nice truck. She never returned. January 2005, Veronica Romero vanished after cashing a disability check. May 2005, Doreen Marquez went missing after visiting friends near the airport. Each name pushed Detective Lopez deeper into sleepless nights, chasing a shadow that seemed to evaporate whenever she reached for it. The women shared more than geography. Most battled addiction. Many drifted through neighborhoods where poverty blurred the edges of the law. They were easy to overlook. That suited the hunter perfectly. By late 2006, whispers spread among women working the strip. A quiet man, clean truck, tinted windows. He offered warmth, money, maybe a ride to the next motel. He never raised his voice. He never showed anger. But everyone who entered that cab disappeared into silence. Ida Lopez compiled the disappearances into a single dossier. 11 names, 11 faces. She begged for aerial searches of the mesa west of town, cheap land slated for new subdivisions. Requests stalled. Funding dried up. Bulldozers moved in, carving roads across the plateau, pushing sage and sand aside for cul-de-sacs with names like Sunset Breeze and Desert Rose. Beneath those rumbling machines lay secrets only the wind knew, secrets packed in shallow graves no more than 5 feet deep, each bone laid down with an almost tender care. Years passed. Housing markets crashed, construction halted. The mesa fell silent again, scarred by half-paved streets that led nowhere. And still the hunter remained invisible, satisfied perhaps that his gallery was complete. One February morning in 2009, a woman named Christine Ross walked her dog, Ruka, along what was meant to be a neighborhood jogging path. Ruka darted into scrub, then reappeared carrying a long white object in her jaws. Christine thought it was a piece of pottery, until she saw the unmistakable curve of a human femur. Police arrived, swept the area, and uncovered the first skull before dusk. The earth surrendered the rest over slow, painstaking weeks. 11 women. All the missing names Detective Lopez had pinned to her board, and none she had not. News crews camped at the edge of the excavation. Helicopters hovered, shooting wide images of blue tents and evidence flags, speckling the sand like confetti after a funeral. The city recoiled. Families wept and held vigils. But when the dust settled, no fingerprints, no DNA, no eyewitness testimony pointed to the one who had done this. Only a broad smear of tire impressions, wide tread, high endurance, looped across the crime scene, fading at the edges like a signature wiped by wind. The West Mesa bone collector had left behind nothing but silence, and silence keeps its own counsel. Chapter 2. Unearthed Voices. Dawn washes the mesa in pale gold, revealing a landscape that suddenly looks less like desert and more like an open wound. Canvas tents huddle in rows, their seams snapping in the breeze, while floodlights cast harsh halos across bare earth pitted with square excavation pits. You stand at the tape line with the early rising news crews, watching white-suited technicians kneel beside each hole like priests presiding over unspoken confessions. Each brushstroke of their gloved hands brings another shard of a life to the surface. Threads of hair turned brittle, a turquoise hoop earring dulled by silt. The smooth crown of a skull still marked by lipstick-red residue of a once-painted fingernail. The air tastes of gypsum dust and something older, something metallic that settles on the tongue like regret. Names that had drifted on flyers for years finally acquire weight. Jamie Barella, Cinnamon Elks, Evelyn Salazar, Veronica Romero, Monica Candelaria, Doreen Marquez. The list keeps going until all 11 emerge, catalogued and zip-tied into evidence bags that click shut with a finality no courtroom gavel could match. For Detective Ida Lopez, the sight is both vindication and horror. She walks the perimeter alone, notebook forgotten, coat unbuttoned despite the cold. The flashing strobes of patrol cars make her face strobe between triumph and grief. She had prayed she was wrong. Being right feels like a slow-moving avalanche burying every hour she ever spent, begging superiors to act sooner. The medical examiner works under a portable awning, calling out measurements that echo across the basin. Tibia length, dental patterns, pelvic morphology. Dates are scratched onto evidence tags. Most of the women died between 2003 and 2005, but some bones bear weather-worn edges, hinting at earlier secrets still hidden beyond the search grid. By mid-morning, the news anchors find their angle, a serial killer in the sand. Reporters jostle for quotes, and every sentence Detective Lopez utters is trimmed into soundbite confetti that flutters through evening broadcasts. But the families gathered just beyond the cameras hear something different. The steady weeping of a mother whose phone will never ring again. The ragged breathing of a sister, staring at a Polaroid that can't possibly capture the warmth of a laugh now extinct. Albuquerque's mayor establishes a multi-agency task force overnight. Federal profilers fly in, laying color-coded maps across folding tables inside a borrowed conference room. They talk about victimology, anchor points, escalation curves. They note that the graves appear in pairs and trios along a gentle slope angled toward the city skyline, as though the murderer wanted his lost congregation to look upon the lights they were never allowed to reclaim. Investigators photograph tire impressions looping between burial sites, heavy tread, dual rear configuration, possibly a contractor's flatbed. Casts are poured, but soft sand compromises every ridge. A single partial shoe print, Size 10, Vibram Soul, lies just beyond the westernmost grave. No match in any database. Rumors soon outrun facts. Some whisper about Lorenzo Montoya, a tow truck driver with a history of violence who once owned land near the Mesa. Others point to a long-haul trucker seen frequenting Central Avenue motels, a man who bragged about desert parties that always ended after midnight. A third theory circles a former Albuquerque policeman dismissed for misconduct, rumored to cruise the corridor in an unmarked SUV. Yet DNA from the burial site offers nothing. Time and drought have leached every trace of skin oil and sweat into the thirsty soil. Forensic botanists study root systems weaving through the bones, estimating deposition dates by ring counts in tamarisk stalks. They conclude the graves were opened and closed in spurts. 3 in 2003, 2 more in late 2004, another cluster by mid-2005. Then the digging stopped. Why? Did the killer move on, die, or sense construction crews creeping closer each year? Families hold vigils along Central Avenue. Candles flicker in glass jars, their flames mirrored in tear-glossed eyes. Drivers slow to stare, some honk in solidarity, others turn away because tragedy, like a roadside crash, is easier to stomach at speed. You move among them, listening. One father recounts the last voicemail his daughter left. She promised she was turning things around, that a new apartment waited if she could just make rent. A best friend describes the smell of Evelyn's favorite perfume. Coconut and jasmine, summer in a bottle. Now the scent summons only winter nights filled with unanswered questions. Detective Lopez returns to her precinct desk long after midnight, clicking through decades-old arrest logs for anyone booked on solicitation and assault during the critical time frame. Patterns emerge. A certain dark pickup ticketed twice for faulty taillights. An anonymous tip about a quiet man who collected jewelry from the women he met. Pawn shop records showing a sudden influx of silver hoops and heart-shaped lockets between 2004 and 2006. None of it coalesces into proof, but the detective keeps writing, pen scratching like a metronome marking lost time. And the Mesa waits. Floodlights switch off, tents collapse, evidence trunks roll away. Yet wind forever rearranges the surface, and coyotes pad across the scars as though reading braille written in grief. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the one who made those scars may still watch, listening to news updates, driving past impromptu memorials, smiling faintly each time a suspect's name rises and falls without touching him. Night folds over Albuquerque again, darker this time because now everyone knows what lies beneath the soil, and knowing is its own form of terror. The city's neon still throbs along Central Avenue, but every shadow seems to hold a pair of unseen eyes. The West Mesa bone collector keeps his silence, the desert keeps his secrets, and the families keep waiting for a justice that may never trek across that barren plateau. Chapter 3. Shadows Among the Living. The Mesa is quiet now, but the city below stirs like a hive prodded by unseen sticks. Billboards flash tip-line numbers beside the solemn eyes of 11 women. Talk radio hosts dissect every rumor until breakfast plates grow cold. In living rooms across Albuquerque, parents lock eyes over the rim of coffee cups and wonder how well they really know the people who pass their daughters on the street. Detective Ida Lopez builds what she calls her shadow binder. Photos of men who cruised Central Avenue between 2003 and 2006. There is Lorenzo Montoya, broad-shouldered, smirking in his booking photo, arrested once for strangling a sex worker who survived only because a neighbor heard the struggle. There is Ron Irwin, traveling photographer, whose business card was found in a motel trash can the same week Cinnamon Elks vanished. And there is Apostle Alfredo Lee, self-styled street preacher, notorious for late-night sermons delivered from the open door of a dark pickup. Each file hums with half-truths. Each pair of eyes seems to follow Ida as she paces her office at 3 a.m. Yet evidence refuses to settle on any single face. Montoya died in 2006, shot by another would-be victim who turned his own gun against him. Irwin has ironclad alibis pinned to thousands of time-stamped photographs. Lee drifts from shelter to shelter, leaving only unverified stories in his wake. The task force chases each lead down blind canyons of paperwork until even the federal profilers begin to doubt the hunt. Still, the families refuse to let the case cool. They hold candlelight marches along 9 Mile Hill, that steep climb westward where headlights wander off into emptiness. They plant 12 white crosses, one extra for a still unidentified victim whose DNA yielded no match, and ring them with plastic roses that flutter in the scorching wind. At night, the crosses glow faintly in the sweep of truck headlights, a reminder to every passing driver that the desert keeps count even when the city forgets. Across town, a forensic anthropologist named Dr. Camille Torres sifts through boxes of bone fragments under fluorescent lab lights. She notices something the desert could not hide. Delicate micro-fractures on 3 femurs, each nearly identical in angle and depth. They suggest blunt force trauma delivered by a tool with a rounded edge, perhaps a tire iron or a heavy flashlight. The pattern narrows the killer's timeline. Such wounds would bleed, meaning the women were probably struck moments before death, not afterward. Detective Lopez circles the new evidence in red, feeling the circle tighten. She also revisits the tire impressions. A retired mechanic helps her identify a rare tread sold mostly on utility trucks used by landscapers. Only 42 sets were registered in Bernalillo County during the active years. Ida spends weeks combing DMV archives, but the records are incomplete, and many trucks changed hands before the manufacturer's recall in 2007. She drives to junkyards, crawling beneath stripped chassis, looking for any surviving tire that might bear desert sand still trapped in its grooves. Day after day, her fingernails caked with rust and grit. Night after night, she wipes them clean before pinning another unclaimed clue to her board. Meanwhile, the killer's legend grows. Children swap stories on playgrounds. If you see fresh tracks in the sand, turn back before the bone collector adds you to his garden. Teenagers dare each other to climb the Mesa at night, armed with cell phone flashlights that barely pierce the dark. One morning, a group of thrill-seekers finds a dead coyote stretched across a dusty trail, ribs cracked open and organs removed with surgical precision. The rumor mill spins faster. Has the collector returned to practice? Television crews descend again, hungry for footage. They film drone shots of the Mesa, the crosses, the excavated pits now filled and marked only by faded orange stakes. The footage airs nationwide, and for a brief flicker of headlines, the entire country imagines the dry desert wind whispering a killer's name it will never speak aloud. But attention fades, as it always does. By autumn, network vans roll toward fresher tragedies. The task force shrinks to a skeleton crew. Tips slow to a trickle. Even the plastic roses bleach bone white and crack under ultraviolet glare. The desert begins to reclaim its hush. Detective Lopez feels the silence settling over the case like dust, so she wages her own private war against forgetting. She visits each victim's mother or sister or friend and records hours of memories, favorite songs, childhood dreams, the way Cinnamon Elks drummed her knuckles on the table when she laughed. Ida stores the tapes in a fireproof box because stories, she believes, are evidence the desert cannot erase. One winter evening she plays those tapes back to back, letting the voices fill her living room. As Veronica Romero's sister recalls a Sunday picnic by the Rio Grande, Ida notices a phrase repeated in several interviews. Many victims talked about heading up to the Mesa to watch fireworks with a man who knew all the quiet pull-off roads. Fireworks, quiet roads. Ida's mind flashes to an aging case file. A series of illegal fireworks complaints logged near the Mesa every 4th of July between 2003 and 2005. She digs out the reports, each signed by the same responding officer. each describing unexplained tire tracks near the burial site coordinates. The responding officer's name is Daniel Valdez, a patrolman who retired on disability in 2006 after a car accident crushed his leg. At the time, Valdez lived in a trailer only 3 miles from the graves. He owned a dark blue pickup with aftermarket tint and oversized utility tires, the exact model recalled in 2007. The accident that ended his career happened on Central Avenue at 3 a.m. when his truck collided with a lamppost outside the Blue Cactus Bar, the last place Jamie Barella was seen alive. Ida's pulse hammers. She runs the Veen. The truck was sold for scrap 2 months after the accident. The scrapyard crushed it within days. No tire casts survive. Valdez himself now resides in a small town near the Arizona border, walking with a cane, drawing a pension check. On paper, he remains an honorable retiree. In Ida's mind, he becomes the man she has hunted for 6 years. She gathers a slim warrant. Cell tower pings, overtime logs, proximity to complaints. A prosecutor agrees to a search of Valdez's storage locker, hoping for memorabilia taken from the victims. Deputies force the latch and swing the door wide. Inside, dusty furniture, old uniforms, and a single stained mattress curled against the wall. No jewelry, no photos, no trophies. The locker exhales the stale smell of mildew, nothing more. Valdez denies everything. He says his only crime was caring too much about the runaways he encountered on patrol. "I tried to help those girls," he insists, eyes glassy behind thick spectacles. "Some nights I'd drive them to detox, bring them coffee. You want to crucify me for kindness?" His lawyer cites lack of physical evidence, and Valdez walks free before sunset. The district attorney drops the case. Speculation cannot stand in court. Ida watches him leave the courthouse, leaning on his cane, profile haloed by Klieg lights that paint him half angel, half monster. Which part is real? She may never know. Later, she drives the long slope to the Mesa alone, parks at the edge of the burial ground, and steps out beneath a moon so bright it throws shadows like daggers. She stands among the crosses, listening for any echo of the voices she recorded. Wind whistles through dry grass. Coyotes yip in the distance. The desert offers no verdict, only endless night. But Ida Lopez is not done. 11 souls crouch in her memory demanding an answer. She tightens her coat, grateful the winter air burns her lungs. It reminds her she is alive, and that the killer, wherever he is, must still breathe the same cold air. And as long as he does, this story is far from over. Chapter 4. Echoes in the Earth. A new summer blisters the high desert, hardening the mesa's crust until even the coyotes avoid crossing it at noon. Heat shimmers above the gravel, but under the surface the ground is restless with secrets Ida Lopez refuses to let lie. She petitions the task force commander for one last push, a full geophysical survey across all undeveloped acreage west of the burial field. The commander frowns at the cost, yet the detective's fervor, whittled sharp by sleepless years, finally slices through budget red tape. In August, 2 box trucks grind up 9 Mile Hill, hauling ground-penetrating radar rigs. Arrays of metal sleds glide behind all-terrain vehicles, pulsing radio waves 10 feet under the soil. Technicians huddle over laptops that bloom green and amber lines across the screens. Every anomaly, every pocket of disturbed sediment appears as a bruise on the monitor's glow. The sweep lasts 6 days. Most readings are clean, geology undisturbed for millennia. But on day 7, a pattern flares. 3 oval cavities aligned like stepping stones, half a mile south of the known graves. Ida's chest tightens with the awful anticipation of finding 12th, 13th, 14th victims, no one reported missing. She orders a forensic dig. Backhoes nibble through rock crust, and deputies with trowels follow, peeling soil as if turning pages of a reluctant diary. First, they find an upended shopping cart, long rusted into lace, then the cracked hull of an industrial refrigerator once pitched from a truck bed. Beneath that, only stone, a false alarm. Relief crashes over Ida so hard, her knees tremble. She reminds herself that every negative result is still a map, sketching where the killer did not walk. While machinery churns, a cold case analyst named Miguel Atencio cross-matches arrest logs with mortgage records and cell tower dumps. He writes software scripts that sift millions of pings for devices lingering along Central Avenue before vanishing west toward the Mesa between 2003 and 2006. One phone number recurs on 12 critical nights. It belonged to a prepaid handset never registered to a name, but its movement tells a story. Downtown bars at midnight, blank desert by 2 a.m., back in the city limits before dawn. The cell pattern overlaps perfectly with known disappearance windows, including the night Veronica Romero went missing. Ida stares at the plotted dots swirling on Miguel's map. They form an eerie loop, like a noose tightening with each pass. The strongest tower hits cluster near a decommissioned water tank road, property once leased to a small irrigation company. Ida's mind sparks. Irrigation contracts require heavy trucks fitted with dual rear tires to haul water and polypipe. The same tire configuration found beside the graves. She tracks the company's employee roster from that era. One name leaps out, Daniel Valdez's younger cousin, Esteban, a quiet mechanic who quit suddenly in late 2006 and relocated to Nevada. Esteban's personnel file lists advanced welding skills, a fondness for night shifts, and multiple written warnings for taking vehicles off-route without logging mileage. Ida submits for a subpoena of Esteban's credit reports and learns he still makes monthly payments on a private storage unit 3 states away. The task force commander grants travel funds. Ida and 2 marshals drive 12 hours across barren highways that look hauntingly like the fringes of her own city. They reach the storage facility at dusk, dust devils corkscrewing in the lot. The manager escorts them to Unit 117, its orange door gleaming like a warning flare. The marshals cut the lock. Stale air billows out, smelling of motor oil and old sage. Inside they find a stripped pickup bed, 2 oversized tires with desert silt packed deep in the treads, and a welding torch tagged with New Mexico utility stickers dated 2004. In the far corner stands a plywood wardrobe. Ida opens it and freezes. Hanging from nails are women's handbags, 11 in all, each tagged with masking tape scrawled in blunt marker, JBCEES, all the victims' initials lined up like trophies in a hunter's lodge. A moth flutters from the darkness, wings dusting against Ida's cheek. She scarcely feels it. What she does feel is the quiver in her hands as she photographs every bag, every scuff, every lipstick tube rattling inside cracked leather. Yet one initial is unfamiliar. AL. The bag contains a broken flip phone and a casino rewards card for someone named Angela Lopez. No relation to the detective. A database search that night shows Angela vanished from Reno in 2007. Her case still cold. The timeline means the bone collector may have migrated and killed again. Esteban Valdez is arrested at dawn while clocking in at a truck stop garage. In interrogation, he denies everything, claims the bags belonged to girlfriends who left him, one after another. Pressed about the initials, he shrugs, says he cannot remember so many names. Marshals present photos of the grave site. Esteban's pulse spikes, sweat beads under fluorescent bulbs, but he keeps repeating a rehearsed line. I found them. I didn't kill them. His lawyer arrives, ends questioning, and soon a judge tosses the initial search on a technicality. Nevada warrant paperwork filed with a typo in the unit number. Evidence seized is inadmissible. Esteban posts bail within hours, vanishes before ankle monitor installation. By the time marshals raid his apartment, every trace of him is gone, Lease paid, closets empty, the silence mocking. Ida drives back to Albuquerque, feeling the desert stretch endless outside her windshield, strand upon strand of road unwinding under an uncaring sun. Each mile hum through the tires feels like a drumbeat, spelling out the names of the women she could not save. Yet she refuses surrender. For every lead that crumbles, another waits under the sand. She returns to the Mesa at sunset, watches light spill red across the plateau. In that glow, she imagines the 11 women standing shoulder to shoulder, not as victims but as witnesses whose testimony continues in wind and dust. She vows aloud that she will not let their voices fade. The vow carries across the emptiness, thin but unbroken, an echo looking for somewhere to land. The desert swallows the sun. Night rises like floodwater, but beneath that dark tide, Detective Ida Lopez keeps wading, one step, one clue, one heartbeat at a time. Chapter 5. Threads of dust and data. Summer yields to a brittle autumn, and the Rio Grande shrinks into a ribbon of tarnished silver. Farmers burn field stubble west of the city, smoke plumes bending low before the cold front that always ushers in October. Detective Ida Lopez stands on the roof of police headquarters, watching ash drift over downtown like gray confetti, and decides the investigation must evolve or die. She turns to science. A retired geospatial analyst named Dr. Malik Deshmukh agrees to help. His specialty is pattern modeling, teasing meaning from the random scroll of human movement. Ida supplies him with everything: timestamps of disappearances, cell tower pings, tire impressions, even the illegal fireworks complaints. Dr. Deshmukh feeds the data into an algorithm built for tracking insurgent bomb layers overseas. The program plots heat maps that pulse across the Sandia Basin, revealing loops of activity converging on the West Mesa like arteries feeding a heart. At first, the patterns look familiar: Central Avenue, the strip clubs, the bus depots. Then Deshmukh adds weather data: wind speed, temperature, barometric pressure on each night a woman went missing. A new shape emerges, more serpentine than circular, slithering between motels and abandoned frontage roads. Every vanishing occurred on nights when the wind blew steadily from the west at more than 15 miles per hour. The killer, it seems, preferred cover: dust storms to veil his movements, wind to scatter scent and sound. Ida checks historic wind records and frowns. Another cluster of identical conditions is forecast in 2 weeks. She proposes an operation: place decoy officers along the boulevard, monitor traffic onto the Mesa, and intercept any vehicle that matches the old tire profile. Command hesitates. Budgets are thin again, and the DA still aches from the embarrassment of the tossed Nevada warrant. Ida counters that embarrassment is cheaper than another decade without answers. They relent. October 15th arrives wrapped in a gritty dusk. Gusts swipe at street signs until they clang like cheap cymbals. Thunderheads roll over the Jemez Mountains, but no rain falls. Only sand everywhere, pelting mouths and windshields. Undercover officers take positions outside the Blue Cactus, the Desert Star Motel, the convenience store where Evelyn Salazar was last seen buying cigarettes. Unmarked SUVs idle curbside, dark windows reflecting neon so the vehicles appear almost alive, humming with thin-lipped anticipation. At 1:47 a.m., a black utility truck, extended bed, double rear wheels, slides from a side street and coasts west. Plates are obscured by a mud flap hanging too low. The windows shimmer opaque. 2 squad cars fall in behind, lights off. Air support can't lift in the storm, so the convoy trusts luck and timing. The truck crosses city limits and climbs the grade toward 9 Mile Hill. Brake lights flashing once as though signaling some invisible sentinel. Then it veers onto an unmarked service road, private land, slated for future development, but still raw, pitted with washouts. Patrol units hit their bars. Red-blue strobe bursts across the dust. Instead of stopping, the truck accelerates. Rocks spit from the dual tires. Officers radio ahead, but there is no ahead. This road dead ends atop the mesa. Ida, listening from command, feels her ribs tighten around her lungs. The pursuit lasts 90 seconds. At the cul-de-sac's unfinished curb, the truck fishtails, slams a berm and stalls. 2 doors open. A man stumbles out the driver's side, limping hard. Passenger seat empty. He raises his hands before the guns rise. Sand swirls so thick, the officers' voices sound drowned. They cuff him. Name: Hector Pulido, a sprinkler system installer with a record for theft. No violent priors. In the truck bed, they find PVC pipe, a toolbox, 3 empty coolers. On the floorboard, however, lies a stained blue tarp folded with unsettling care. Forensic techs will later swab it and find a mixture of animal blood and bleach, nothing they can tie to the women on the mesa. Pulido insists he ran because his license is suspended. He knows nothing about murders, he says. He only came up the hill to dump old piping where no one would charge fees. Investigators hold him 48 hours, test every surface for DNA. Nothing. Tire tread is similar but not identical to the casts. Pulido walks, shaken but free, and the operation folds under public ridicule. Media headlines mock Halloween season witch hunt. Funding tightens again, yet Ida extracts one precious shard, the limp. Witnesses from 2005 mentioned a driver who favored his left leg climbing in and out of the cab. Valdez's cousin Esteban walked without issue. Pulido limps from a childhood injury. Ida updates her matrix. The killer may have handed off the truck, or multiple men could be involved. An unholy relay passing terror down the line. The thought chills her. She revisits phone records, focusing on brief, late-night calls between prepaid numbers, bouncing across state borders. One burner, traced by financial subpoena, purchased 20 gallons of quicklime at a Las Cruces feed store in 2004. Security footage shows the buyer shielding his face with a baseball cap, left leg stiff. Ida freezes the screen and magnifies the cap logo. A stylized howling coyote, identical to an emblem sewn on Hector Pulido's work jacket. Pulido is taillight, false lead, or missing link. Either way, Ida can no longer stop. She persuades a magistrate to authorize 24-hour surveillance. Detectives track him to a trailer outside Moriarty where he lives with an elderly aunt. For days he follows a routine. Garage shifts, grocery runs, evening beers on his stoop while coyotes yip in distant arroyos. Nothing sinister. But on the 5th night, under a crescent moon, Pulido drives east instead of west into open ranch land. The unmarked tail keeps distance as he turns onto a ranch road and parks by an abandoned windmill. He unloads a shovel and heavy duffel, disappears into knee-high scrub. Officers circle wide, radios hushed. After 30 minutes, Pulido returns alone, duffel empty. They detain him without headlights, shadows flitting in gun-mounted flashlights. The shovel blade is clean, but fresh scratch marks scar the handle. At the windmill, foot officers unearth a shallow pit. Inside, a 7-foot python skin, a rusted horseshoe, and duct-taped bundles of women's clothing matted with hair. Tests will show the hair belongs to several people, at least one of whom is Veronica Romero. Pulido sits in interrogation, wrists trembling but jaw set. He says the clothes were planted to frame him. Says coyote hunters stash strange trophies. Says anything but why a duffel he carried now lies empty in a hole he dug. He requests a lawyer. Questioning stops. Ida paces outside the room, fury simmering. She knows physical evidence linking Pulido to murder is still fragile. The prosecutor warns the chain of custody on the duffel might wobble under defense fire. Ida steps into the desert night, hears wind whistle through corridor gaps, and realizes she is balanced on a knife edge. Push too soon, lose everything, wait too long, risk another body. She decides to gamble on memory, She arranges a lineup for the one surviving street worker who once fled a pickup after smelling bleach on the seats. The witness enters the viewing room, eyes scanning each man behind one-way glass. When her gaze hits Pulido, she flinches, steps back, covers her mouth. Tears well. She points. Number 4. Defense will argue lineup bias, trauma confusion. Yet Ida feels momentum shift, a subtle tilt like marble rolling into place. She sets wheels turning for a grand jury, knowing the path ahead is pitted with cracks, but also knowing the desert seldom gives second chances. As paperwork stacks, autumn smoke finally clears. Dawn reveals snow dusting the sandias, white on red rock. Ida drives to the Mesa, parks among the silent crosses, and whispers the update to the empty air. No answer echoes back, only wind. But she imagines 11 faint smiles easing under the earth, as if the desert itself approves the narrowing of the hunt. Chapter 6. Trial by Wind. Winter closes its fist around Albuquerque, shaking sleet against courthouse windows as a grand jury convenes. Prosecutors lay out threads of tire tracks, burner phones, wind-borne dust, and the witness who fled a bleach-tainted cab. Jurors vote to indict Hector Pulido on 11 counts of first-degree murder, but the case feels as brittle as desert glass. Public defenders attack each seam: the tossed Nevada warrant, the money trail that led nowhere, the lineup conducted after midnight when trauma distorts memory. Inside the courtroom, Pulido sits motionless, one knee bouncing beneath the table, eyes fixed on a stain in the carpet as if reading fate in its shape. Detective Ida Lopez testifies for 6 straight hours, voice steady, spine rigid, recounting every missing person call, every bone lifted from the sand. She wills the jurors to smell the dust, taste the grit, hear the way silence screams under the Mesa's crust. Yet cross-examination chips at her mosaic. Why no fingerprints on the handbags? Why no DNA on the tarp? Why did she wait years to focus on Pulido when other suspects once filled her board? The defense frames her as a crusader, blinded by the need for closure. Some jurors nod, unsure where fairness ends and vengeance begins. After 9 days, the trial stalls on a hung panel, 8 for conviction, 4 for reasonable doubt. The judge declares mistrial. Reporters swarm the steps, microphones angled like bayonets. Families of the victims clutch one another, mouths open in silent wails. Pulido exits under armed escort, free on bond, limping through a gauntlet of grief-stricken faces. Cameras capture a half-smile ghosting across his lips. Next morning, newspapers magnify it into a smirk that sparks outrage citywide. Ida drives to the Mesa and stands among the crosses until darkness pools around her boots. She vows this is not the end. If law cannot cage Pulido, truth still might. She turns to new science, isotope analysis. Tiny shavings from bone reveal markers of water and soil. They show where a victim drank days before death. Lab results draw lines north to a disused livestock pen near Rio Rancho. Ida walks the pen at dawn, sees shovel scrapes on caliche rock and bits of tarp snagged on goat grass burrs. Each scrape feels like a whisper telling her to keep digging, literally and figuratively. She assembles a second, quieter case. Fuel receipts matching Pulido's bank card to dates of known disappearances. Surveillance photos of him visiting the storage unit months after release, replacing the lock, then tossing a bulging garbage bag into a county landfill at 3 a.m. Recovery teams scour the landfill, sifting mountains of refuse until sunrise ignites over endless plastic peaks. They uncover a rust-eaten flashlight, its grip taped. Blood tests positive for human protein but degraded beyond typing. Still, it is a tool with the right arc, the right heft, the right story hiding in its dents. Ida freezes the flashlight in evidence, filing it away like a prayer waiting for an amen. Chapter 7. The Desert Remembers. 5 years crawl past. Funding dries. Task force walls are stripped of maps. New crises bloom and fade. Yet Ida Lopez, now detective turned private consultant, refuses to let the Mesa fade into myth. She spends nights at her kitchen table, coffee cooling while she reviews property deeds for every acre west of Albuquerque sold between 2002 and 2006. One deed jumps out. A 5-acre parcel purchased by a shell company traced to a P.O. box, Pulido, once used for car part catalogs. The land sits vacant, scrubland pocked with yucca and jackrabbit burrows. Ida secures a warrant, her last pulled favor, drives there with a single deputy. They walk the grid, metal detectors humming. Near a rain-carved gully, the detector wails over something buried shallow. They kneel, scrape back soil, revealing a steel ammo box. Inside, photographs. Each shows a woman standing beside the black utility truck, smiling awkwardly as if promised a ride or a job. In every picture, the wind lifts her hair westward, and the horizon behind her is the very mesa where her bones were found. Dates are scrawled on the margins, trophies caught in time. Among them is a face Ida does not know. Angela Lopez from Reno, her unknown 12th victim. They also find a Polaroid of Pulido himself, leaning on the truck hood, left leg stiff desert dusk flaring behind him. The image carries a fingerprint in clear gelatin residue from the camera's developer pack. Forensic matches it to Pulido on a 10-point strike. This time, the evidence chain is ironclad. Police seize Pulido at a rural mechanics bay near the Arizona line. He faces new charges: kidnapping, murder, possession of human remains. Defense pleads the print could have been planted. Prosecutors counter with GPS metadata in the Polaroids and trace minerals on their edges that match only the West Mesa bedrock. During pre-trial, Pulido tries to cut a deal. Reduced sentence for revealing undiscovered graves. He draws a crude map marking 2 more burial spots farther west, outside the original search radius. Crews dig. Nothing. Prosecutors revoke the offer. Pulido's bluff dissolves, but Ida senses the map was half-truth. Perhaps there are graves, just not where he marked. The collector may still savor a secret slice of desert no spade has touched. As trial looms, Pulido fires his attorney, claims Ida framed him for vengeance. He mails rambling letters to newspapers, hinting at accomplices. We were many. We had rules. Investigators chase that riddle and uncover CB radio chatter archived by hobbyists. Late-night truckers warning each other to avoid the collector's patch on stormy nights. Voices distorted by static mention a man who paid for silence with cash and fear. None use names, but fear, Ida knows, is an address. She just has to follow it. Prosecutors prepare to argue Pulido didn't act alone, that his cousin Esteban and possibly others helped lure, bury, and vanish. An indictment breathes at the edge of their lips. Esteban, whereabouts still unknown, becomes phantom partner, sharpened into menace by absence. The night before opening statements, Pulido is found in his cell, throat cut by a shard of mirror. On the wall, he scrawled a single phrase in blood. Still missing too. Cameras caught no intruder. Authorities rule it suicide. Trial ends before it begins. Records seal. Families receive another avalanche of non-answers. Ida walks the mesa again, Polaroids in her coat pocket, wind tugging at her sleeves. She counts 11 crosses, then looks westward where the land ripples toward the horizon. Somewhere out there lie the missing 2, if Pulido's final words spoke truth. She thinks of Esteban, of anonymous truckers, of shadows inheriting shadows. The collector may be dead. The collection may continue. Chapter 8. Silence is not the end. The desert has a way of teaching patience. Seasons grind rock to powder. Stories grind pain to resolve. A decade after the first bone surfaced, developers return, eager to lay more cul-de-sacs across the plateau. Community protests rise. Families of the 11 march with signs reading, "Don't build over our daughters." News crews film earth movers idling at dawn, waiting for permits to greenlight progress. City Council orders one final survey. Archaeologists fan across the Western Tract, flagged by Pulido's dying message. Third afternoon, a grad student brushing sand from what he believes is pottery touches something smooth, round, unmistakably human. Excavators freeze. Shovels switch to brushes. They uncover two skeletons, buried deeper than the first graves, wrapped in tarp stitched shut with copper wire. Dental records identify Ida Lopez from Reno and an unknown woman whose molars show Mexican dental resin. She becomes Jane Mesa 12. The count is now 13. Public fury reignites. Headlines scream, "Pulido's final truth." Ida, invited back as consultant, watches forensic lights dance over the new graves and wonders whether Pulido was pawn or king. The depth and care of these burials suggest refinement, almost ritual, traits that bloom, she thinks, when practice meets obsession. Evidence bags yield a single clue, a brass token stamped, Route 17 truck stop, free shower. Surveillance archives reveal that on certain windy nights between 2003 and 2006, a blue semi with a coyote emblem fueled there, its driver limping slightly. Esteban, another partner. The question hovers in the baked air like a mirage. Authorities reopen warrants. Billboards go up across the Southwest. "Do you remember this emblem?" Tips flood hotlines. One caller claims a limping trucker boasted of a graveyard view route. The tipster gives partial plates. Investigators trace them to a scrapped semi in Nevada, sold for parts 2 years earlier. As crews search the salvage yard, a fire breaks out, consuming records, plastic, rubber, everything flammable. Arson investigators find accelerant. Arsonists find shadows. The collector's reach, Ida realizes, might outlive flesh. She stands on the mesa at twilight for the last time in this story. 13 crosses now catch the dying sun, silhouettes stretching east like fingers pointing back at the city that failed them. Ida plants her boots, speaks the names one by one, finishing with Jane Mesa 12, promising no one will call her unknown ever again. The wind rises, warm, then cool. Somewhere a long-haul horn echoes off canyon walls. The sound rolls across the plateau, fades, returns faintly, as if answered by another far beyond sight. Ida closes her eyes, listens, understands. The desert may never fall entirely silent, but neither will it surrender every word. Some secrets remain half-buried, waiting for new ears, new shovels, new storms. She leaves the mesa knowing the case is as solved as it may ever be in paper-thin courtrooms, yet forever alive in restless sand. The West Mesa Bone Collector, a name etched in bone and rumor, remains lesson and warning. Predators thrive where eyes look away, and justice is a journey walked by those who refuse to stop, even when the road becomes nothing but dust. If this story kept you listening, honor the women whose voices were stolen. Share their names, keep their memories alive, and stay alert for those still missing around you. Subscribe for more real stories that refuse to fade, and let the echo of truth travel farther than any wind across the desert.